Do you ever wonder when is the appropriate time to kill off a franchise? Well, these guys don't. Fast 10 is just around the corner. The 10th installment, if you don't count the spin-offs, of the Fast and Furious franchise. Obviously, cars, heists, and high-profile appearances for the sake of high-profile appearances. They all add to the allure of the franchise that seeks to preach to us all the coolness of cars and the virtues of family. But when they started going into freaking space and started talking about collabing with dinosaurs, it all seemed a little too far away from where they started back in 2001, when there was racing souped-up Supras and Eclipses and spouting the corniest one-liners ever construed by a sentient human being.
Hey man, he was in my face.
I'm in your face.
Having said that though, I'm no better. It all seems so distant now, but given this introduced a lot of people to that car culture that still lingers on today, I figured, what the hell? It's my childhood, as it was a lot of yours too. So, kick back, we're going a quarter mile at a minute, however it goes, and we're gonna tackle an icon of an embarrassing era. Let's f***ing go. First off, the protagonist, or main good guy, Brian O'Connor, an LAPD cop who's tasked with investigating a string of truck heists in the state of California. Given the links from the heist to the street racing scene, Brian goes undercover as a local street racer, of course, under a bogus name.
Brian Earl Spillner. Sounds like a serial killer name. Is that what you are?
Yes.
The FBI figured that the likely person behind all of this DVD player stealing malarkey is Dominic Toretto, a fair street racer with a juvie record whose motto is, it doesn't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Family's family. For 3 whole ass weeks, Brian hangs out at their shop, asking for the same tuna fish sandwich on white bread every day.
No crust.
I mean, at that point, dude may as well be eating cat food. But I guess it's worth it if he's working a side quest in plain sight. I mean, hey, it's a Hollywood film directed by an aging albino. You need that love interest angle in there, even if it shouldn't be within 5,000 miles of it. I mean, that's Hollywood, right? But while he may be attracting the right kind of attention there, it draws the ire of Vince, one of Toretto's crew members. Don't know why he has to get aggro though. Maybe he really did like the tuna.
Bullshit, asshole. No one likes a tuna here.
They get into a scrap, which leads to Dom banning Brian around his market and getting fired from his undercover job at the auto shop. I can still hear the sump hitting that curb, like fingernails on a chalkboard every time. Luckily for him, however, the firing lasted about as long as one of Tom Brady's retirements. But while he is still banned around Dom's market, there's no mention about the local street racing scene, so Brian heads down there hoping to meet up with Dom again, albeit on good terms. It was scenes like this that introduced me to this world. A lot of us, in fact. Well, this and Need for Speed Underground. It was our idea of heaven. Brian's too, but his mission remained the same. He's trying to get a lead on those heists. That do be his job. And whatever avenue it takes to get there, he's gonna take it. Even if it means putting down the pink slip for the green machine, just so he can enter the race between himself, Toretto, Danny, and a pre-Fire Fest Ja Rule. Although however green that Mitsubishi Eclipse is, it's nothing compared to Brian.
I lose, winner takes my car clean and clear. But if I win, I take the cash, and I take the respect.
Oh boy, this film does not leave you wanting for corny lines. You know, in some ways, this film has aged like a dead dog in the sun. Or one of my videos, they take part in the longest drag race in the history of drag racing. Toretto's Mazda RX-7 dominates until Brian fires up the NOS. He's getting closer, and closer, and closer. He got him. Then Toretto opens up his NOS and completely dumps him. Race lost, engine lost, car lost. But he was gracious in defeat.
What are you smiling about?
Dude, I almost had you.
You almost had me? You never had me. You never had your car.
Brian may have lost that race and his car, but some lost more than that. And of course, at that moment, the cops show up. Half of Orange County being blocked off would do that. Everyone scarpers. Dom is left fleeing the cops on foot, only for Brian's engine bay to magically repair itself and come to the rescue. He didn't forget about Brian's stake in that race. He might be on a rescue mission here, but Brian be taking that bus home when all was said and done. But at the very least they were— crap, here we go. They stumble into the territory of Johnny Tran, an old headache of Dom's from back in the day. Johnny, along with his brother Lance, hear that the intrusion was an accident. Oh, okay. We'll let yous go then. Nah. And they're off on foot. Toretto apparently needing someone to walk him home after dark. Yeah, Brian may have lost his car, but at least he has forged some kind of partnership with Toretto. Exactly what he was hoping to achieve. If Dom was hijacking those trucks, he was in as good a spot as any to now find out for himself. And even got a free beersy out of it.
Yo, Dom! Why'd you bring the Buster here? 'Cause the Buster kept me out of handcuffs! The Buster brought me back.
Oh boy, small man syndrome at play there.
You know you owe me a 10-second call, right?
Oh yeah, that pink slip deal. His car may have been blown up by Rick Yoon and that dude who played Eddie Kim in Prison Break, but that don't render the pre-race bet null and void. Brian now had to fork out and find something that can murder any other thing out there using 4 wheels, an engine, and 4 or more bottles of NOS. Good thing he's a cop, just use the impound lot. He reasoned there would be some poor dudette's Toyota Supra in there, and there was. Sort of.
This is your car.
My car? I said a 10-second car, not a 10-minute car.
Hey, pop the hood.
Pop the hood?
Pop the hood.
Pop the hood?
Pop the hood.
Pop the hood?
Pop the hood.
Dom approves of a 2JZ engine, even if the race of the Supra is an automotive image of my mental state. They commit to souping it up to get ready for Race Wars, the ultimate showdown for street racers all over the state. At the same time, Brian is roped into Dom's crew, racing cars, fixing cars, putting stickers on cars, anything and everything. He is now part of the one thing that Dominic Toretto values more than any other thing in the entire world. Family. Speaking of which, Brian starts getting cozy with Mia, Dominic's sister. This further enraged Vince, since he has been given a passport to the friend zone by Mia.
Hey, what was that Cuban restaurant you wanted to take me to? What was it called?
Cha-cha-cha.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Well, you can take me there. Friday night at 10. Is that good for you?
Ooh, that's rough, man. I mean, Brian may not even like Cuban food. Dude probably just wants another tuna sandwich.
No crust.
Vince certainly hated Brian. And when I say hate, I mean hate. It's like that angry guy on Twitter if he actually had the balls to be that angry in real life. He would do anything to take Brian down. And when he sees him sneaking around garages, checking everyone's equipment out, that seemed like vindication to Vince. Brian knew what tires the heist cars were running, and that was why he was jumping around these joints. But now that he was caught, he had to throw up the lie of the century. Brian claims he was scoping out garages to help get Dom the edge for Race Wars, to make sure that he doesn't fail Dom again, and that Hector is going to be running 3 Honda Civics with spoon engines.
And on top of that, he just came into Harry's and he ordered 3 T66 turbos with NOS and a Motec system exhaust.
For Vince though, he wasn't convinced. He knew what Brian was. He's a cop. But Dom, perhaps not wanting to believe that Brian was a part of the Bacon Brigade or else bought into Brian's story, lets him off the hook. I guess. As a sort of litmus test, they sneak into Johnny Tran's garage. There they see Johnny beating down the auto shop owner and, surprise surprise, a whole heap of DVD players and TVs and other stuff that was said to be stolen in those truck heists. And now it appears that maybe it's him that's behind all of this. Nah. At least, not in the opinion of Brian. There ain't enough hard evidence. But the FBI want answers. They want someone to fall, even if they're not totally proven guilty. Essentially, the firing process of a football coach. They then suggest Toretto, but Brian pushes back. They suggest that he might be going native. They might have been onto something there, because Brian was becoming more and more of a family member in the family of families. Dom shows off his pride and joy, a 1969 Dodge Charger, 900 horses of Detroit muscle, a car that he built with his father, who was killed by a rival race car driver back in the day. Dom's reaction led to the guy being beat half to death, and him thrown in jail, a scar on his record, something that led to a lifetime ban from stock car racing, and something that the FBI continued to use against him. But they needed a full guy, and with Brian around, it wouldn't be him. The FBI sent a SWAT team to Johnny Tran's crib, and then the penny dropped.
The DVD players were purchased legally. All we've got on Tran and Company are a couple low-rent weapons charges and some outstanding speeding tickets.
I mean, hey, at least they got him on the speeding tickets. It is a paramount issue nowadays rather than catching burglars or murderers. You know, thanks to this humiliation, Brian is given 36 hours to find the real culprit. But if he wasn't lying to himself, he already knew who this culprit was. It's Toretto, of course. The question is he ready to rat on him? The ultimate choice, career or family? Whatever he planned to do, there was still race wars to be run. The crew turn up and, for the most part, they clean house. Letty tears up in the 240SX. Leon wins, I think, in the R33. And Jesse's Jetta leads credence to... this guy again. Brian then goes into high alert because he knows what Johnny Tran is running, saying he's got over 100 grand's worth of equipment under that hood, which, if you adjust for inflation, barely affords you milk nowadays. He implores Jesse bails out of the race and gets out of Dodge, especially given it was Jesse's father's car, and the wager for this race was the pink slip. Jesse might be good with algebra, but this is the one time that his ADD is gonna let him down. So they race, and What do you know? Oh well, serves him right for dissing the Honda S2000. You're driving a Jetta, man, you got no business throwing darts. Jesse skips town with the Jetta, dishonoring the bet that he made with Johnny Tran, disrespecting him and his whole family. Later on, Dom, Letty, Vince and Leon leave in the dead of night. If he didn't realize it before, this now just confirmed to Brian that these were the fellas that were behind those heists, but he has built a rapport with them, and he knows that truckers statewide were arming themselves with shotguns, claymores and wooden spoons. The next time they attempt something like this, they're gonna get a one-way ticket to the pearly gates, provided that's the direction they go. He reveals to Mia that he's a cop. GG, Benedict Arnold. All trust and love is gone, but Mia knew what would happen if the heist went ahead, and Brian knew what would happen if he stayed quiet. Gotta take the L train here. They set off after them, and sure enough, they ended up picking the wrong trucker to mess with. Vince is badly wounded, and Brian, in his attempts to Indiana Jones his mortal enemy out of the situation, almost has his head blown off by said trucker, who decides that the best way to save his truck is to blow it up. Everyone is safe, but Vince is bleeding profusely and in dire need of medical help.
Yeah, this is Officer Brian O'Connor.
Oh my god, I haven't seen anyone that angry since Nico Rosberg had to pay taxes. Any connection with the Toretto family has now been severed, but hey, at least Brian's job has been saved, I guess? All he's got to do now is bring Dom in. Piece of piss, considering Dom said he'd rather die than go back to prison, and that he was developing an ulcer just looking at him 2 seconds ago. A standoff at the Toretto family house. One was bound to go down. And then Jesse turns up after being on the run for 24 hours. He's scared to death and needs protection. But it's too late. He's mowed down by the Tran brothers. Brian sets off after them, seeking vengeance and justice. I suppose. For a moment, they have him cornered, and then Dom shows up with the Charger, the one that he built with his father, the one that he swore never to drive, as it apparently scared the shit out of him. It does take something to scare Dominic Toretto, but for him, there was one thing that always triumphed over fear every time. Family. Lance is down, but not quite dead. Maybe he'll appear in the 37th sequel or something. After a brief chase, Brian takes down Johnny Tran, turns out he's dead, and then redirects his attention to Dom. Cops all over town are looking for him. He may as well be the one that takes him to the slammer, because if it was any other cop, odds are he'll be taking a dirt nap. For whatever reason, they parlay into a race. I guess a sort of last meal, or last race, before being taken in. The train tracks would mark the finishing line. Tuna versus muscle. Brains versus brawn. Cop versus Kojak. 13,000 guest ships later, and the lights go off at the tracks. The train is coming. It just so happened to be now, didn't it? In a dead heat, they avoid the train and make it across the tracks fine. Well, that ain't ideal. Dom almost concedes defeat right there and then. Go on then. Arrest me. Nah, here's the keys. Still owes him that 10-second car after all. Dom drives off. Brian walks off. And the credits roll. None of this makes logical sense, but in this crazy franchise known as The Fast and the Family, logic and realism are low on the food chain. Ironically, this film probably does make the most sense out of all the ones to come. Granted, the plot is still a bit of a mess, but for a lot of us, it introduced us to this world. Not all of us, but a lot of us can trace our love of cars, in particular this sort of stuff, to this film, to a time where this was aesthetically pleasing, when the world wasn't totally screwed over, where people thought that Limp Bizkit was good music. But please guys, don't break stuff, let's keep on rolling. It was much simpler times than what we have nowadays, with cars being flung around on ropes, cars going into space, and high profile appearances for the sake of high profile appearances. But there's a long road ahead in a franchise that has gone on for way too long. Is this the best film in the entire franchise? Personally, no. But we are going a quarter mile at a time here, so we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Or drift to it. Wink wink, nudge nudge. That was so freaking lame. For what it's worth though, The Fast and the Furious is a classic worth watching. You are bound to be entertained, provided your IQ doesn't exceed 19. It's the first chapter of a franchise and of a family.